Hey all, here at OS Reviews. A few months back, we did a revisited review on the LG G8X, which I thought remains an excellent value smartphone, and at the time it was more of a sad farewell to LG as we learned the news that they were quitting the phone business, as unfortunately they were losing money for a number of years on their smartphone division. But I did think at the time that this would probably be one of the last LG phones we covered, but it turns out that's actually not the case. Today we're taking a revisited look at another phone, which is pretty unexpected, and I'll go over some of the reasons why, but as you can tell by the title already, this is going to be a revisited review of the LG V35. So before we dive in and talk about the performance and the design, just as a quick disclaimer for why this is unexpected, the reason actually lies entirely with AT&T shutting off their 3G service here at the start of 2022. I still have a few family members that are still using AT&T, and I only learned very recently that as part of that migration to supporting only 4G voice over LTE phones, AT&T has one of the most strict list of requirements that I've ever seen. Essentially, even if your phone supports 4G LTE, if it supports 5G even, it came out just a few months ago, it may not be supported on AT&T service if it's not on their specific list of devices that they require. And that's covering even prepaid phones, where if all you need to do is make a phone call, you still can't use some of those devices if it's not on their approved list. And to be honest, it's quite frustrating and infuriating because you won't find any Xiaomi phone, any Huawei phone, even their latest flagships on this list because AT&T decided it shouldn't be there. And any other variant, such as versions from T-Mobile that you've unlocked, will also not work. It has to be a very specific model variant. But as part of this search process for one of my family members that didn't really want to shift to another carrier, I found that LG's list of supported phones was at least a little bit more diverse, and specifically looking at the options we had here, the LG V35 was one of the options that you could pick up and still works with making phone calls with the 4G migration. The V35 was actually a carrier exclusive that only came with AT&T. I didn't have to worry about having a small model number that doesn't exactly match, making search a little easier. Second reason being that unfortunately LG's phones, again, also probably due to the fact that they've quit the smartphone business, have depreciated a lot in terms of value, so it still remains very good in terms of the specs and the overall price that you're paying. So let's go over some of those in a bit more detail now. This phone actually came out in mid-2018, so it's part of the same generation as the Samsung Galaxy S9, just as reference, and for an equal device from Samsung or Google, you have to usually pay about twice the price of what this is now sitting at, which is around $80. You can even find it at a slightly lower price than that if you're willing to go for a slightly more used condition model. So undoubtedly that puts it into super budget territory. So let's take a closer look at the design. Now the LG V35 is interesting because it's essentially in the same body as the LG V30 that came before it. However, it has upgraded specs, which are pretty much identical to the LG G7. So in this sense, you can think of it as just one generation behind compared to the aforementioned G8X, which was one of the final phones before LG had quit the business. So the phone weighs only around 157 grams, and for reference, the G8X weighs almost 200 grams. So we're talking about a 40-50 gram difference, which is pretty substantial on a phone that is not too far off in terms of size. I mean, yes, the V35 has a slightly smaller 6-inch OLED display compared to 6.4 inches, but we are still talking about a pretty large phone. So for folks that wanted to travel light, it definitely was one of the appeals of this particular moment in time of LG flagships. However, construction quality was already top-notch. It combined a stainless steel frame, which is super polished and beautiful to look at. And yes, it still is a glass sandwich design, both on the front and on the back. Plus, LG does enable Qi wireless charging on here. It still feels very premium. It has a 3,300 milliamp hour capacity battery, which is actually 300 milliamp hours larger than the more popular LG G7 that was promoted a bit more since it's not just a specific carrier exclusive. So this one has a slightly larger battery, but still feels very light, in addition to it's powered by a 10 nanometer Snapdragon 845 chipset, flagship grade back in 2018, and even today, to be honest, still holds its own. Newer phones using chipsets in the 600 and 700 series will still be inferior in terms of benchmarks and actual speed as you start using it. So fairly good there. The phone also came with 6 gigabytes of RAM, which was upgraded from the LG G7's 4 gigs. Otherwise, on the back, we have two 16 megapixel cameras, one which is a wide angle lens, another primary shooter, laser autofocus, along with a fingerprint scanner, which is very fast and easy to hit. It also combines a power key, so it physically depresses, like many classic LG phones of its time. The SIM card slot can also hold an expandable micro SD slot to further supplement the 64 gigs of built-in storage. The phone was fully IP68 water resistant, and it also comes with a headphone jack on the top, which was a very rare attribute even in 2018, and that's because LG's phones came with the quad DAC support, which this has, giving you just really awesome audio quality if you wanted to drive higher quality headphones, although the speaker quality is only so-so. In fact, it's just a mono speaker located on the back. The earpiece unfortunately doesn't serve double duty as a stereo speaker, so that was one slight con, but it gets plenty loud. And then on the other side, we do have dedicated volume keys, which are very tactile and responsive. On the front, we have, again, that 6-inch POLED display, which is QHD resolution at 2K, so it's pin sharp, and because it's an OLED screen, it has excellent contrast, brightness levels, and one of the things I do like about LG's design here is it is technically a curved screen, so I know a lot of folks out there don't really love curved screens because if they're too dramatic on the sides, it can cause some ghost touching as you put your palm on the side there. So on LG's phones, it's mostly squared off, a flat surface, but they still try to curve it ever so slightly. It's much more subtle compared to the Galaxy S9 and some other curved screen phones from the time, but again, if we try to look at it from the edge, you can see how the icons fall off the ridge as you start to swipe there on the side there, so it still is giving you a pretty interesting effect, but because it's much more subtle on the front there as you're holding the phone, you're not going to be accidentally touching the sides. This phone does not have a notch, and therefore, it's symmetrical, it doesn't have any cutouts, which many folks prefer, even if it has a little bit of a larger chin at the top and bottom, but to be completely honest, I think it still looks quite good, has held up quite well in terms of design at least, now that it's almost 4 years old, so time really does fly. LG's skin on top of Android has always been a little bit on the heavier side, so it's not quite as clean and vanilla as some folks prefer. However, it does give you a lot of features which I personally do think are quite nice. So this being an AMOLED display, there is an always-on display mode that shows your clock and notifications. LG is one of the manufacturers that does have double tap to wake, so you can tap anywhere to turn this phone on and off, which works quite well. And again, that fingerprint scanner is lightning fast. So let's take a closer look at the camera experience next. Now, LG's marketing at the time also essentially put all of these phones under their quote-unquote ThinQ or Think family, which was honestly a little strange, but it tried to refer to some of the AI functionality that the phone has, which is more of a marketing buzz term, but it does have essentially pretty good auto detection modes. When it comes to general photography, it's always going to be tough to beat a Pixel. Even something like a low-cost Pixel 3a, for instance, will arguably give you more consistent performance thanks to the computation of photography, but LG's cameras on here are certainly not bad, and then one of the benefits of this is the versatility of getting you a wide-angle lens. So as a whole, you do get, I would say, pretty good details if you are kind of zooming in, and it's, again, not going to be the best camera in the world anymore, but still produces accurate-looking colors. Some more shots of flowers, for instance. You can see that as a whole, if you start to zoom in a lot, you can still notice a little bit of loss of detail, but to be honest, it all looks quite good as I am just using it and quickly snapping away. All is satisfactory. Even the mic sensitivity are all attributes that you're able to control and refine just by using the app. Final photos here, this is captured using the AI mode with food as the object. It tries to make the object a little bit warmer in color to make it seem more appetizing, which I think mostly works. This is an example of the wide angle lens, and in the regular mode versus its night mode, which you can turn on, it just tries to brighten things up a little bit as long as you hold still, and this is the same overall field of view that you would get using the primary lens standing in the same spot. So like I said, the camera is nothing to scoff at. Now time for a demo of how it works in terms of playing back a YouTube video, its speaker quality, and overall the app experience is fast and responsive. We can even go into the mini screen view and still multitask. Everything still feels quite fast and fluid. No hiccups that I'm seeing here in terms of the transitions. Very beautiful screen here thanks to the contrasty OLED nature. Blacks are pure dark, and you do get that vibrant pop from colors that are shining across. Of course, fully laminated with wide, generous viewing angles. And because the curves here are very subtle, nothing really rolls over, and as a whole, you're getting a beautiful display. Quality of the speakers are also not bad in terms of this being such a thin phone. It doesn't sound too shrill or tinny and gets plenty loud at max volume, but again, it is a mono speaker and an area where I do wish they could have used the earpiece here as a second stereo set, would make it even better. But again, luckily LG has excellent audio using its headphone jack with that beautiful DAC, and if you want to plug in more expensive hi-fi grade headphones, you'll get a even better experience. And then you can trigger that mode just by swiping down here and then turning on the quad hi-fi DAC. Just using that once headphones are in there, you'll turn on that feature, along with a optional 3D surround sound mode, which is also available once you plug in headphones. You even get the ability to change things like the balance. The left and the right sides can be turned individually from each other if you want to further tweak those settings, and as a whole, again, it sounds amazing. Now, as far as some of the essentials are concerned, like making phone calls, reception quality, that all remains quite good, I would say. I'm getting nearly full bars for both Wi-Fi and also 4G LTE, and all of the main home screens here can be further added. You can swipe up to access the full drawer of applications, which feels, again, fairly standard. With that being said, because this is an AT&T phone, funny enough, there's a lot of bloatware that AT&T packs it with. So things like certain exclusive from AT&T Mobile Security, even a lot of these weird kind of trial versions of games, and even Facebook Messenger are pre-built. So to be honest, there's quite a lot of stuff on here, clutter I would consider, that you can thankfully uninstall most of if you aren't going to use it. Now the same thing goes with many of the other kind of software apps, utility apps I should say, such as the clock and calendar. They've all been tweaked and customized by LG, but it's not bad. Overall, it presents a pretty consistent looking UI, and I do particularly like LG's built-in voice recorder app, which allows you to also kind of record notes depending on different scenarios, sensitivity, as well as the format. You can also record up to FLAC, lossless resolution, or memo function, that even though this phone doesn't have a built-in stylus, you can still scribble away using your hands, type things in. Haptic vibrations all feel pretty good on here, and the phone is running on Android 10.0, which is actually pretty up to date, I would say, considering its price point, and again, enabling us access to all the gestures for navigation. Everything does feel pretty fluid and responsive. Battery life, again, at 3,300 milliamp hours, is also sufficient to get you through an entire day, usually. It offers quick charge support, so you can top it up pretty quickly, usually in just an hour. Will get you about 80% charge, so not too big of an issue, I found. Try web browsing here, jumping into something like The Verge. Pages are still loading back very quickly, as you can see there, even if I wanted to do the desktop version of the site. Overall, it still is quite responsive, despite this being a pretty complex page, and things still feel pretty smooth and responsive. So no issues as far as using it for browsing the web. The 845 is still holding its own and doing a great job in terms of RAM management. As far as gaming is concerned, like most modern Android smartphones, you also have a dedicated kind of gaming optimized setting once a application like a game opens up. So we'll try to close and minimize distractions as you're gaming, and also turn the performance mode kind of on high. And overall, again, it's a very nice experience. Even if you are doing a bit of gaming, the phone does get a little bit warmer, admittedly at the bottom section after you start to game for more than, let's say, 30 minutes or so, but it never overheats. No issues in terms of thermal throttling. So again, very good. Maybe compared to the latest 8 Gen 1 or 888 processors, you have to wait just a second or two longer for the games to open up. But after they are open, everything still is very fast and a much superior experience compared to other budget chips that you'll find on new phones for the same price tag. So that is more or less it as far as our revisited review of the LG V35. And even outside of AT&T, if you're picking this up to use with other GSM carriers like T-Mobile, it still is a very good value, I have to admit, when it comes to the performance, a excellent display, very good audio through the headphone jack, overall pretty good battery life, decent cameras, and all at a super affordable price for 6 gigs of RAM and the Snapdragon 845, still wrapped in a very sleek and stylish, lightweight smartphone. So if that's what you're looking for, you can check out more details, and again, just shows that it's pretty sad that LG is no longer a competitor in this space, but still makes, again, excellent value here if you want to consider something like this. That's been the LG V35. Thanks for watching this revisited look here at OS Reviews.